Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining AMGC's webinar series. We'll give it a few more moments for people to join before we kick off. Thank you.
Hey, Ellen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellen from AMGC. Welcome to AMGC's webinar series, 10 Ways to Succeed in Australian Manufacturing. Today is focused on Way 6, Adopt Technology. We will now pass you over to our host, Michael Sharp, National Director of Industry.
Who I think is having some technical issues just for a minute. Are you back, Michael?
Okay, hello. Welcome, everyone. What a day. I'm coming to you from the mobile Zoom studio. Some people call it a car, but today I'm in Davo and glad you could all join us. I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of country and say that in the spirit of reconciliation, the AMGC acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. As I said, I'm coming to you from Davo, the land of the Wiradjuri people. And it's been a bit of rain out here, so the local farmers are happy. And there's a lot going on. I can tell you there's new companies starting here in Davo and manufacturing is growing. So that's the good news. We've got a great range of speakers today. So I'd like to introduce our panelists and perhaps you'll each give us a bit of a wave as I introduce you. Firstly, we have Joe Hugman, who's the Industry 4 team leader at REDARC. And Joe is a process engineer and MBA graduate with 20 years experience in advanced manufacturing, having worked in aluminium smelting, photovoltaic solar cell manufacturing, oil and gas production, and electronics manufacturing, just to name a few. Welcome, Joe. Nicole Davidson is the marketing manager at Davidson Engineering, and it was a great privilege of mine to go and visit the family farm down in regional Victoria earlier this year. Nicole's got 25 years of experience running a small steel fabrication business and a farm with her husband in rural Victoria. After the invention of Davo's fencing clip in 2017, Nicole took on the marketing role with no experience, but looking to social media, Nicole's taken Davo's fencing clip from concept to sales of $250,000 in just 2 years. And we're sure going to talk about that. So welcome, Nicole. Great to be joined by Alfredo. Alfredo Martinez-Cole is the Director of Business Relationships Biomedical at the University of Technology, Sydney. Alfredo joined UTS as the Director and is focused on increasing the level of industry engagement and collaboration around biomedical capabilities. There's much we'll talk about with collaboration with our universities today, so welcome, Alfredo. Great to have my colleague Michael Haddy joining us today. And Michael is the State Director for South Australia with AMGC and also our National Director for Defence and Space. Also, just want to mention that Michael has a 3-decade-long background in business and commercialisation, particularly with software engineering. So certainly a lot going on in the advanced manufacturing space. Glad you can join us, Mike. Now, just a bit of housekeeping and remind you all that we will be recording this seminar and you'll be available to see it on our YouTube channel tomorrow morning. So if you need to play it back or you have any questions, feel free to jump onto the YouTube. But as always, submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And I'm happy to take questions throughout the next hour and put them to our panelists. So feel free at any time to reach out. Remember that the report, the 10 Ways report, which I have here with me today, can be downloaded on the AMGC website completely free. And look forward to any comments you might have on that. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. The report has come about from more than 30 focus groups. And many of you met with our Director for Research, Katie O'Connell, as we travelled the nation, engaging with through roundtable discussions and the various interviews that we conducted. 93 individuals from manufacturing companies, industry bodies, government agencies, and of course our universities. These bodies represented approximately 370 manufacturers right across the country. We also had a survey of 1,000 members of the Australian public and a survey of 1,000 students and other focus groups. So broad research. Now, just at a glance, this is way 6. Today we're talking about adopting technologies. And new technologies can deliver significant productivity gains and make companies more responsive to customers and the competitive changes. And what a year of changes we've had, right? 2020, the year that just keeps on giving. And it's not over yet. But we found that many manufacturers are being held back by a lack of information and a sense that they need to make an all or nothing change. And I think some of our panelists will talk about that today. It's important to get expert advice. It's vitally important to make a plan, learn from others, and starting small can all help firms to implement the right technology for their needs. So I just wanted to start with a quote that we have here in the 10 Ways report. And it says, leadership needs to drive technology adoption, otherwise it won't happen. However tempting it may be to do the things they've always been done, you don't try and hold back the tide, you learn to surf. And I think that's true, right? So I'd like to turn to Joe because, you know, learning to surf and the way we've seen technology being adopted over the last 6 to 8 months during the crisis has been transformational. What's your experience?
Thanks, Michael. So certainly at REDARC, we've had strong leadership around technology adoption. So for those of you who don't know, REDARC is a privately owned electronics design and manufacturing business based in Adelaide. We're a very successful company and we've been on an Industry 4 journey since 2016. And that was initiated by the owner of the business, Anthony Kittle, who had attended various workshops like the one we're in now, and he heard about this thing called Industry 4, and he didn't really know what it was all about, but he could get a sense that it would be a good way to help REDARC become a globally competitive manufacturer. So he assigned me this project, Industry 4.0. We got some expert advice in the German Fraunhofer Institute to get some ideas across from Europe. And from there, we had to think about what could our business look like in 2025 and, and then taking the steps backwards, what technologies could or should we use for then? And so with Anthony's blessing, we did some small experiments with cobots down at the Flinders University, just trying some things that people said couldn't be done, making robots put labels on things, which is quite a dexterous task.
Sure.
And lo and behold, robots could do it, and it sort of opened the eyes for the other engineers around here, and they really got on board, and now we make our highest selling product on a collaborative robot production line. So
okay,
we've certainly had good leadership from the top to help us with our technology adoption.
So with that technology adoption though, the plan, it sounds to me like the plan was very important. So putting that plan together to look what the company looks like by 2025, that must have been a process.
Absolutely. So I guess what you need to think about is, what does your business need to do, and how could information help improve your products or your processes or your culture? Yep. And then from there, think about, well, what technology is going to help us with that. I guess if you go the other way and try, technology looking for a home,
Yeah,
it's less likely to be successful because
that's
it may not
true.
match what your business need is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's what is the customer looking for? What does the customer need? The old mother of invention, I guess. And that's a good segue to you, Nicole, because inventing the Davo's fencing clip was innovative and groundbreaking, but it came from a specific need that you had, right?
It was a very specific need. My son and I were out fencing one day a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, and there's my husband Rod, the inventor of it. We came home after a day of hammering staples into wooden posts with very sore arms and feeling really grumpy. Rod, who is the engineer in the family, said, "How did you get on?" So we told him, and he walked out of the room. When he came back in about an hour's time, he said, "I've fixed it." And he held out one of these for me.
Yep.
A tiny little piece of bent wire, and every farmer knows that bent wire is your best friend. Rod managed to bend it around in such a way that when you hang it on the wire and then poke a screw through it into the post, you don't need to be hammering those staples in anymore. We were just astounded that we couldn't buy them, and we searched high and low all over the world, and nobody has ever thought of it before. So we thought necessity was the need. That makes my middle name Necessity. We thought we had to share this idea. How on earth were we going to do it? So the next thing was, short of a pair of pliers bending them all up, then we needed to adopt some technology in manufacturing, in wire manufacturing, which wasn't an area we'd ever worked in before.
And you guys were recently successful with the Manufacturing Modernisation Fund. So that's allowed you to upgrade the equipment that you invented. And so,
yeah, well, being bits of chickens, we didn't want to spend a whole stack of money in the beginning on an unproven concept. So we spent the bare minimum on a 30-year-old, one of the early CNC wire forming machines. It has spent the last couple of years proving the market for us, and we were thinking where to there, and then all of a sudden the Manufacturing Modernisation Fund came up. We were successful with an application there and have ordered a new wire forming machine from Taiwan, which has landed on the wharf in Melbourne on Sunday. So
that's
we're really
fantastic.
excited to get that up here in the next couple of weeks and set it up and really ramp up our production rate, and our quality as well will be improved. So
no, that's great.
Then we'll be heading around the world.
It was terrific to visit you and Rod on the farm and see the machinery in action, but to talk about the plans as well. So we'll talk about a bit more about that shortly. But I wanted to ask Alfredo about sharing technology, and some of the things that the universities are good at doing is having rooms full of equipment and some of the great minds and researchers there to offer advice. But one of the things that we've got in our 10 Ways report is around sharing technology. So as far as adopting technology, you don't have to go out and buy the biggest and the best. Just as Nicole's just mentioned, there are people out there that can help you in our great universities, right? You're just on mute, mate.
Absolutely, my apologies. Thank you for the invitation, Michael. You're absolutely right. I think, the point I made to you earlier is universities are full of infrastructure that most of the time goes idle because of lack of awareness. People don't know what's around, and therefore the equipment doesn't get used. Because in our case, UTS is a technology-focused university. There is leading-edge technology type gadgets at the university. And it's the perfect ground for an SME or a company that's thinking about, upgrading their equipment or buying new equipment before you make that very significant investment. Come and talk to the university, come and see what the university can do and the sort of equipment that's around. There's also training around this. There's expert advice around, what can be done, what it can lead to. So it's a great way to connect. Absolutely.
And you've got grants available as well to help that sort of cause. So if someone was to reach out to you at UTS and suggest a problem that they may have, you could connect them to the right researcher and potentially the right sort of grant that might be able to assist a small project to get started.
well, you're doing the selling for me. You know, I don't need to be here at all. No, in all seriousness, absolutely. Yeah, so there's a number of industry focused initiatives, and they're not unique to UTS. And I keep banging on about the fact that I don't want you to think that this is UTS centric. Obviously, I represent UTS, but you know, the universities all have similar types of programs to engage with industry. There is national programs such as Innovation Connections that allows, you know, industry to work with universities, and it provides some funding towards projects. And there's a whole bunch of different granting schemes around as well. So,
Yeah. And Michael, you've been working on several AMGC projects, and there's certainly been a lot going on this year that you've been involved with for the COVID response. So technology adoption never stops. We all need to keep growing our business and learning to collaborate with others. What's been some of your experience you might share that's been going on the last few months?
Yeah, thanks, Chubby. We've got quite a few examples of companies around the nation that have been looking at IoT solutions and various other ways of perhaps instrumenting existing equipment rather than buying new equipment, and upgrading their capabilities. It's been quite relevant over COVID to perhaps allow for a reduction in the number of staff on the factory floor at any given point in time. So by instrumenting some existing equipment, they've been able to remotely manage and reduce the staff numbers for social distancing reasons and things like that. So technology has assisted in multiple ways. It's not necessarily just buying a brand new piece of kit. It could be augmenting existing kit as well, and has tremendous advantages. And that will lead on to future Industry 4 advantages as well. Perhaps better optimization of the usage of equipment over time, because they'll be able to now hold on to, or capture and hold on to the data that is in relation to usage statistics and things like that. So it's a step change. It's a pathway to being an advanced manufacturer.
Yep. But for anyone that's out there today, you can feel free to reach out to Michael or myself, and we can connect you to the various programs that are coming available and the various grant initiatives that we're seeing from the federal and various state governments coming online. So, you know, certainly more and more people are talking about manufacturing. That's been a great change this year. And there's been a lot happening too, Mike, with Australian Made and that program too.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, via our manufacturers register for the COVID response, that recently seen a bit of a facelift, and we can now differentiate between imported and Australian-made products on that platform as well. So hopefully that'll assist with the Australian manufacture of response items for COVID, and then perhaps into the future a little bit beyond the COVID response as well.
Yeah, for sure. And Joe, as I mentioned, one of the things we found in our research was that, you know, new technologies, of course, can deliver significant productivity gains and make companies more responsive to the customers and, you know, competitive changes going on. What sort of things did you find in the process of, you know, what you described earlier? So adopting Industry 4 technologies, reaching out to others for guidance and advice. What's been the journey for yourself and REDARC?
So I guess during COVID, we've been very thankful that we had already embarked on an Industry 4 journey, because, you know, we had just recently implemented things like Teams and also a company-wide ERP that, you know, goes from the point of sales through to the point of, through manufacturing, through the point of dispatch, because during COVID, you know, the situation has been very variable. So, you know, we had a big drop and then we've had an uptick. And if we had not had those systems in place, we really would have been, you know, guessing as to what to do. But now we have this information at our fingertips, so we're able to make informed decisions more quickly about, you know, those operational sales points. And maybe this is a good point as well to thank the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre for a grant that we have recently been awarded, and that is largely centred around bringing forward some further information technology, which is really around improving our efficiency through improved information for decision making. So
Sure.
the past few years we've invested in the sort of baseline technologies like a good ERP, some robots, collaborative robots, mobile robots, an OEE system. But now the next step for us is really how do we use that data, transform it into information, use that information to predict something bad might happen, inform someone so they can act on it before the bad thing happens, and or that those well-paid engineers can spend their time looking at the information and making decisions instead of gathering data. So that's a big next step for us, and thank you to the AMGC for helping us bring that forward.
Yeah, no, it's our pleasure to have these various projects going around the country to use as case studies that every manufacturing company can use as an example and say, how can I adopt such technology? So, in many ways, with COVID this year, the crystal ball that we always look to has pretty much gone, broken. The crystal ball is smashed. And so I think any way that we can gain new information in our manufacturing processes and adopting the technology pathway that you're describing would be a strength to growing any business, right?
Absolutely.
So, but Nicole, it doesn't always have to be technical or expensive, does it? I'd love for you to share us a bit of the story around the box that you've designed and you've had manufactured to suit Davo's fencing clip, because I know that that's something that people can purchase their goods from you, and then they can carry that box around on the farm, can't they?
They certainly can. And, we keep getting told that we need to think outside the box. We decided to think inside the box. So ordinarily when you buy a product, it comes in a box.
Yep.
And knowing that when you use this product, you're going to be walking miles and miles along your fence, and you need to be carrying tools, and you need to be carrying, hundreds of clips and screws. People are going to need something to carry it in. I was keen to get away from a plastic bucket style thing, which lots of fencing products get put in. There's certainly an appetite for less plastic in the world at the moment. So I worked with a very innovative company down in Melbourne called Production Packaging Innovation, and they were really keen to work with us on this. And so what we ended up coming up with is a box that when you open it up, it has a handle on the inside so that you can just carry it along.
Yep.
Compartments. Sorry, just trying to work the camera here.
Looks
Compartments inside. So one half is full of clips, one half is full of screws. You carry it down the fence line, get out what you need, sit it on the ground while you're using it, pick it up again, and it works really, really well. So no, technology doesn't need to be high tech, it just needs to be thinking inside the box.
Yeah, I like that. Good response, yes. So on the box though, how did you go about the design? You partnered with other people to help design, or was it partnering with others to do the manufacturing of the box?
It was my concept that we needed something we could carry. And I used, the Stanley knife and various bits of cardboard and came up with a few ideas. Contacted a few box manufacturers. I've never needed a box manufacturer before, so that was, it's all learning. Interestingly, the only companies that came back to me were very small companies. The big guys didn't want to deal with us at all.
Okay.
So Production Packaging Innovation down in Melbourne, just this side of Melbourne, were really keen. So we toed and froed, posted boxes back and forth, various drafts. Their first draft wasn't going to work at all, so we figured out why it wasn't going to work. It's just this collaboration, as we've been talking about, feeding back and forth, and finally we came up with a solution that's just an absolute winner.
Yeah, no, so I love it. I think it's terrific and a great show of innovation. But as you say, it doesn't have to be difficult to adopt new technologies, and you've suited the customers. So congratulations on your efforts.
Thank you.
Please feel free to send through your questions. I'm happy to ask questions on your behalf to our panelists. So send them through. Perhaps now's the time for a poll, and I'm going to ask these in reverse, if you don't mind, Ellen and Kelly. If we can ask the question here, our first poll question will be, what percentage of manufacturers have not introduced new training programs to upskill their staff. Now, if we're going to adopt new technologies, you'd think that upskilling will be important as well. So please go ahead and punch in your answer there. Is it 30.5%, 91.8%, or 67.4%? What percentage of manufacturers have not introduced new training programs to upskill their staff? What do you think? And if we can get the answer there, what did we think? So, oh, that's close, isn't it? So 45% of, okay, interesting. So the answer is 91.8%, which is a massive number. So look at the opportunity we have for an upskilling of our staff right across Australia. And I think, Alfredo, this is where the universities can play a part, right? If we're needing to upskill our workforce and adopt new technologies, what a good place to start where the universities already have the equipment. I often say to our members, if you're looking at buying a new robot or a 3D printer, why don't you reach out to your local university to see what they're using? And they're happy to share that information.
Yeah, and not just the equipment, Michael, but universities are homes to, all these researchers, all these highly educated people around a whole bunch of different technology space. So it's great opportunity to be trained in leading edge technologies, upskilled. We talk about the digital economy and so forth and so on, and blockchain and artificial intelligence, machine learning. All these things are staples in most of the universities. There's significant research and capability in most of the universities, and sort of adopting these kind of technologies can really improve just about any business around. And I agree with Nicole completely. It doesn't need to be a very high-tech solution, but the ability to tap into, what's available and then design something that's quite simple and applicable and does the job. Universities can help with that.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And Joe, we've got some questions coming through, so I'm going to point this one to you if you don't mind. Peter Taylor says, you don't know what you don't know. How do you educate yourself about technology and business systems that could be very applicable to your company to take performance to the next level of business acumen? What's your experience around that? I guess you never stop learning, right?
Correct. In Adelaide, there are certainly a range of different seminars and things put on by the government, other universities and other organisations that are excellent learning opportunities. So I've certainly taken advantage of those. The Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre do various topics as well, like this one. I guess post-COVID, it doesn't have to be Adelaide-centric. You can join in nationally like we are now. Also, the suppliers are more than willing to educate you about their products. Of course, it takes time. You have to have someone who's available to consider these questions and think about how it might be suitable for you. Some suppliers can even offer services to help implement things in your business. So I would say that's how we learn. Also networking. So I can see Colin Thomas has asked the question below Peter. So Colin at Flinders University has been an excellent resource for us. Just getting advice in from external parties about how they see our business or what could help us as well. So
I think this is true, Joe, because as Colin's stating here, Colin says, I see manufacturers with old, even antiquated and inefficient equipment, but without sufficient volume to invest. But they want to keep control of the process and the quality in-house. Are there examples of someone taking the lead to agglomerate the demand and invest in efficient technology and more? And I think what you're saying there is collaboration, again, is a key driver. Because if you're at an event and another manufacturer like Colin describes might be at the same event, you can talk about these things and support each other. And we know that collaboration is a key driver for manufacturing. So I think the more you can get out there and meet other like-minded manufacturers, it's got to be important for adopting new technology, don't you think?
Absolutely. And pre-COVID, we would be doing, 5 or 6 tours a week of our facility here in Southern Adelaide. And I've really found it useful to join into such things, and there are other factories nearby. You know, so down the road there's an automotive factory. They have sometimes similar problems to us. They're working on similar technology projects. So we're not in competition with that business down the road. So why don't we just help each other out and share our learnings? And that's what we do.
Yeah, I agree. And Mike, we've got examples like Southern Strength Agile Manufacturers Network in Sydney. I was talking yesterday to the Geelong Manufacturing Council in Victoria, and there's a range of those collaborative organisations around the country. But I think that's important to Colin's point about you know, bringing suppliers and manufacturing capability to a region. Again, this collaborative effort. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's really important to collaborate on numerous levels, really. And even if it's, there might be situations where, in referring to Colin's comment about antiquated equipment things, it could be that a manufacturer has an antiquated piece of equipment because they don't have the volumes necessary to upgrade it. And so there's an opportunity to, rather than acquire new equipment for something new that's coming along, perhaps to collaborate with another manufacturer who does actually have the volumes for that expertise that you're looking for, at least in the early stages, and you never know, it might actually become a long-term collaboration as well. So there are alternatives to just outlaying more capital for additional equipment, and I think collaboration can be a big part of that.
Oh, no doubt. I think I'd like to ask our second poll now, if we can put that up. Our second poll question is around the web presence. And so the question is, what percentage of manufacturers do not have a web presence? So do you have a website? Do you think that the answer is 34.9, 20.4, or 33.2? Regardless, right? That's an important number. But go ahead and punch in your answer and let's have a look. Because I'm going to talk to Nicole about this in just a second. But if we get the answer there, you'll see that, okay, what do we think? The majority would say 34.9%, and you would be correct, of manufacturers that do not have a web presence. And if you can't get out to your customers, how are you going to sell? And I do come across many manufacturers that are excellent at making stuff, but perhaps not so good at selling their stuff. So I know there's a great opportunity there. And I wanted to ask you, Nicole, about your experience, because you've been doing terrific stuff on Facebook. And I just think that's fantastic. I liked your page and I've been following your posts. But during this COVID crisis, that's only grown for you, hasn't it?
Oh, Facebook has been the only way I've sold anything during COVID. A little bit of history behind it. 30 years ago, we started up our engineering business, and we used the height of technology at the time, a texter and a piece of paper.
Okay.
Wrote ourselves a little blurb, took it to town and got it photocopied and did a mailbox drop. That's the only advertising we did in 30 years. And ever since then, all our business has come through word of mouth and customer referrals. But then when we invented this Davo's fencing clip, that wasn't going to cut the mustard anymore. We needed to reach the whole of Australia. I spent 2019 doing 15 agricultural field days in Southeast Australia. Cost a fortune. That meant I was away from home for 15 weeks. The farm was neglected. The house was very neglected. And the bookwork was neglected. So actually for me, COVID-19 was a bit of a blessing, because it just said, you can't go to these trade shows anymore. How are we going to do it? Mm-hmm. I'd been dabbling in Facebook a bit and it had been successful, but we really ramped that up this year. I have spent $0 on advertising this year, and our sales have are double what they were last year. Mm-hmm. And it's all been through the Facebook page. We've discovered that having a Facebook page of your own isn't the key. The key is getting that Facebook page where your customers are. So whenever I put up a post, I share it to about 50 groups. Most of them are buy, swap and sell groups who look kindly upon small businesses like ours. Some of them don't, so they don't want me, that's fine. And And through that, a YouTuber found us.
Okay.
And so there's, you know, new technology for us.
Yep.
He produced a 20-minute long video reviewing our product, all the goods and the bads of it, put it on his YouTube channel, and our sales tripled.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it has been absolutely phenomenal, and he has taken us around the globe. We've now had only small sales internationally at the moment because, you know, we're not really pushing those until we get our new machinery in online.
Yep.
But we know now that the global demand will be there, and as soon as we can meet the demand, we can just press the button and go for it.
So just for everyone out there, Nicole, could you explain just a little bit in detail about the process of setting up a Facebook page for Davo's Fencing Clip? Did you find it difficult at all? Have you spent money on Facebook advertising?
I tried spending a little bit of money on Facebook advertising, and I think I spent about $30 or something. Didn't get me any leads at all. But when I put something on my own page and then just press share to groups and then select all the groups that I'm a member of that I want to share it to, it's dead easy. And, you know, 500,000 people might see a post.
Yeah, yeah. We do like dead easy. I think that's great. And again,
Yeah.
you're showing that it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be expensive, but now you're reaching a global audience. And I'm really looking forward to this new equipment coming online for you. And I'm certainly looking forward to my next visit to the farm to see, you know, the growth that's occurring. I just think it's terrific. So thanks for sharing that.
We really, really are excited about it.
And rightly so.
Yeah, and I'm no technical whiz, you know. I mean, when Facebook came out, I was all, I don't need to be on social media. I'm quite happy the way I am. When my kids became teenagers and were on it, I thought, right, it's time to stalk them. So I joined Facebook. They're now grown up and gone. And yeah, I've certainly seen the benefits of it.
But this has helped diversify your business too, right? Because on the farm, you know, you have the ups and downs. So this supplements the income to the family business, right?
Yeah, well and truly. Yep.
You and I talked earlier.
Go ahead.
You and I talked earlier about adopting new technology in the fact of outside of your business and the process you mentioned about calving and having to weigh new calves at the cow, you know, with the cow.
Yeah.
So can you just talk a bit about that for our listeners?
Yeah, well, that's not actually something that's an issue for me on my farm, but it is an issue for many people. When I hear people saying, oh, I got belted up by a cow the other day when I was trying to weigh or tag her newborn calf. Now, depending on what your breeding cycle is and everything, there are lots of farmers out there in the beef industry that need to put an ear tag on a calf and weigh that calf the day it is born. That's an incredibly dangerous thing to do because cows, understandably, are very protective of their newborn calves. So there are all sorts of techniques and crazy young cowboys out there trying to do this and not get hurt. And because the cattle I breed are stud cattle, they get DNA parent verified. So that's a relatively new technology. So for me, tagging a calf at birth isn't that big a deal. If I don't know who that calf belongs to for the first few weeks, it really doesn't matter. She knows whose it is. I bring them in when they're about 3 weeks. I'll put a tag on them, take a DNA sample and get that tested, and then I know precisely who the parents of that calf are. But the weighing of the calf, how can that be done differently? And I was talking to a local farmer the other day and we were having this conversation about safety on farm. And I said, how are we going to improve this issue? People getting rolled by aggressive cows has just got to stop. And he has a son who is in robotics or something. So we were thinking about what are the technologies that maybe could help this. So I'm keen for somebody to pick up this idea and run with it. I haven't got time.
But it shows here's one of these classic examples again of there's a need and how can we come up with a solution?
How can we come up with a solution? So we need somebody.
Yeah, well, I think Alfredo, that's where the university can play a part, right?
Well, I was going to say that one of the industry focused programs that UTS has is called Industry Studios. And it's exactly for this kind of thing. an industry partner or anybody can come in with a problem, and we can put together teams from 4 to 6 senior students to work on that problem over a 3-month period. And there's a plan, there's deliverables, there's everything. They're supervised by industry mentors and also by academic mentors. And the outcome of that is your solution. And all of that costs $15,000 all up, right?
Yep.
So this is a really efficient way to look at potential innovative solutions to your problems, right?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I've got a couple of questions coming through here, so I'm going to throw to Joe. I'm going to combine a couple of these because Peter Taylor says that it's been suggested to start simply with technology adoption to solve problems in an organisation. However, how to ensure that systems and technology that you may embrace are scalable and compatible for future needs. And then another point here is, do any of the panelists have a response to the idea that adoption of technology means job losses? And we hear this over and over, don't we? The robots are going to take the jobs. But I know that we found the opposite to be true, that when people adopt new technology, such as automation and robotics, the companies suddenly grow. What do you think about that, Joe?
So I guess responding to the first question is it's about thinking about your business as a whole and the strategy and how much you think you can grow, and therefore right-sizing the technology that you need. So REDARC, for example, we're a medium-sized business, so we implemented an ERP, but we didn't go, to the full SAP or Oracle. We've got a kind of a mid-sized one that's going to, serve us well for 5 to 7 years, and then we're going to have another big project to go to the next step if we keep growing the way we're growing. So I suppose it's strategic choices you need to make. In the end, it has to be a bit of a guess, and you've got to use your business acumen to, come to the right decision.
Again, I think this is another important step around collaboration and working with others to look at adopting the new technology and how it can impact on your business, but seeking that guidance and advice. Often Michael and myself, we hear our members saying that I want to purchase a new robot. And my response has always been, great, but what do you want to do with that robot? Let's put a plan around that. And planning is so vitally important. But I can say too that the companies that we deal with that do install robotics and automation, they upskill their workforce, and people that are currently doing manual handling jobs suddenly become robotics technicians. They're enjoying their new role. They learn new skills. They potentially can earn more income. So I think that's really important. And that's the sort of work you're doing, Joe. Yeah,
absolutely. So you might know the name of the report that did that study, and they found that companies who are adopting automation are growing faster than companies who aren't.
Yep.
So we can understand that. So absolutely, I've implemented mobile robots for stock delivery in our factory here, and I was a bit worried that people wouldn't like having the robots around, that they might be concerned about it. But those individuals are more than happy not to do the boring job of pushing a trolley down a long hallway. Mm-hmm. They're happy to use their time to do the more complicated tasks that those robots are really never going, not in the near term, ever going to be able to do. Yeah. And so, why not give that boring task to a robot and let people use their brain a bit more and do something that's a bit more engaging for them?
Yeah, I think it makes it more interesting for all of us. But Mike, you've had much experience with this. We've talked to our members about job losses and installing robotics and automation. Give us some examples around that.
Yeah, I'd certainly reiterate that I've never seen an overall job loss when it comes to adopting the sort of technology. It's usually been the opposite. And as Joe was alluding to, those companies that adopt this sort of technology tend to grow faster and end up employing more people as a result. I think REDARC's a really interesting example. With Joe here, might want to comment some more on it, but the approach I believe they took for adopting cobotics in their factory was also a match to culture in the organization, rather than adopting more traditional robots that require cages. They've integrated cobotics into the manufacturing floor that can work in conjunction with people and it's I think it's probably helped the acceptance of the technology throughout the factory. Joe, do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, so when I first started reading about Industry 4, some of the principles like flexibility, transparency of information really aligned with the way we like to work at REDARC. So, for example, our building has a lot of glass walls because we believe in that connection from the owner's office in the front, you know, through all the departments, so that we can communicate and we're all one team. And so, for example, we have a rule that you're not allowed to build anything higher than shoulder height in the factory floor, so that we can all kind of stay, you know, visually connected to each other. So then when I saw those principles in Industry 4, I was like, yep, you know, we have that culture around flexibility and, you know, openness. And so, you know, therefore we need robots that are flexible, like collaborative robots, and not some sort of fixed investment.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's great. Nicole, I just want to say that there's a mention here for you from Kirsten, who says that, Nicole, your product and box are awesome. I like your creativity and the environmental thinking. So congratulations again. And thanks
very
Kirsten.
much, Kirsten.
Now, a couple more questions here. I think I'll go to you, Alfredo, just around the R&D and grants. And Mahad even says that, can government increase the tax incentives for upskilling employees on par with the R&D incentives and grants? Can such upskilling be undertaken in rural areas to spread employment opportunities and push cash flow into rural communities, hosting such upskilling courses? Now, I know that the various universities are engaging with Zoom calls like we're doing today, but upskilling the workforce is certainly somewhere that the universities can play a part, don't you think?
And I think that every other university is looking at exactly this as a way out of the university financial hole that we're all in. However, and this is a very personal point of view, that has nothing to do with, you know, my employment with the university or anything like that. I don't think that upskilling alone is going to do anything, because you can upskill people, but if the jobs are not there for those people with new skills to go into, there's no point in upskilling anybody. So you're absolutely right that government incentives need to be aligned with the jobs of the future, or that upskilling that needs to happen, so that there are incentives for people and there's going to be opportunities for people to go when they have those new skills. Otherwise, you're just changing one set of knowledge for another one, and we're still in the same boat. There's no jobs, right? So yes, the government incentives need to be aligned, and this is a whole of government thing with, you know, where does the government is going to support going forwards, right? So if it's around locally developed, you know, products, you know, innovations and manufacturing, great. Then you know that there's going to be jobs in manufacturing, and you know that there's going to be jobs in, you know, local innovation being developed further. So you can upskill people to train for that. But if there's no alignment of those incentives, then it's a moot point.
Yeah, sure. No, there's certainly more and more opportunities, and we need to engage with all of them. So please keep your questions coming. We've got a couple of more here. And just to touch on the cattle weighing, Nicole, my colleague Angela Doyle says, could you weigh the mother and calf together and then work out the mother's weight and subtract that from the total weight? So here's the collaborative effort already happening and already underway. So who knows what we might come up with out of this excellent Zoom commentary. Thank you for that, Angela. That's terrific. Colin Thomas asks another question here around technology. So he says that automotive manufacturers were our leaders for technology. And Michael, I'm thinking here about our projects with DovTech and OmniTanker. But Colin says, you know, who do we look to now for that leadership in manufacturing that we did have in automotive? I guess DovTech's a good example, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It's also a very interesting point in that manufacturing has learnt an awful lot from the car manufacturing industry over the years, and their contribution to lean manufacturing and all those concepts has been invaluable, and it's certainly helped accelerate manufacturing in other domains as well. I think there's probably clusters of manufacturers that can take the role to an extent. It won't be quite the same as automotive, I don't think. It doesn't stop us from participating in automotive still, just because the manufacturers are not here, the primary manufacturers, the likes of Motherson down in southern Adelaide, right next to REDARC, in actual fact, are still participating in that industry. It's just a slightly more challenging, I guess, from Australia, and a diversification of other previously successful automotive manufacturers like Axiom Precision Manufacturing, again Adelaide, given I'm South Australian. The diversification into to defence and medical markets and things. Those will, I think, will generate these clusters around and those verticals in the medtech sector. Perhaps Alfredo can comment, given his past roles. There's a growing number of manufacturers in each of these segments that perhaps they can start taking the place of the automotive sectors.
And I know that you are biased to South Australia, naturally enough, you and Joe, so that's fine, of course. But Alfredo, it's true, isn't it? You know, manufacturing is evolving. We've now got the Australian Space Agency and the largest defence budget in our nation's history. And we know that our members are engaging in those new opportunities and looking to evolve their business to grow. So certainly in the medtech space, you've seen that.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, we keep talking and we keep hearing in just about every webinar and forum around the COVID response, right? Medtech and pharmaceuticals and life sciences have played a massive role in this and has come to the fore. People don't tend to think about their health until they're sick, right? Until something really happens. And it's really important for preparedness to work on these strategies in developing new technologies and working around, you know, these supply chain issues, right? That have been very evident from the beginning, when we desperately needed PPE and we don't manufacture PPE in Australia. And all of a sudden, you know, it's like, well, we now need to have some sort of strategy to make sure that we are prepared for the next wave that's going to come at some stage. So all these things, horrible as they have been a push to really develop these innovations and make us aware where the deficiencies are and build sort of capability around that. Right? So,
I think like never before, you know, certainly this crisis has, you know, people have said that we've seen about 5 years worth of innovation in the last 5 months. I'm sure that's true. And as Nicole mentioned about, you know, just with Facebook, that was just an innovation that she's adopted and it's helped to grow the family business, which is just terrific. Joe, I asked you before we started about a book or a podcast that you might share with some of our listeners, something that you might go to or someone you recommend as people could perhaps pick up their own copy or listen into a podcast. What do you recommend?
For people just starting out learning about Industry 4, there's a book called Makers. It's The New Industrial Revolution by Chris Anderson. It's a book that's been around for a while, but you know, quite an interesting read and sort of gets you into the topic.
Oh, good one. We've got a question here too, which is for all our panelists, I'll ask each of you, but what would be the one piece of advice regarding technology that you'd want us all to leave with? So keep that in mind. But yes, some good podcasts and stuff out there too, Mike. And I know you've talked about the Harvard Business Review. You know, what do you lean on as far as, you know, learning what's going on out there in the world today?
Yeah, so I guess last week I was focusing on HBR, very good good podcasts and various other forms of advice. But I think there's also some others like NIST, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, have a manufacturing innovation blog. It's gets into the weeds sometimes, but it's really quite fascinating. And there's a number of those. If you do a bit of a Google for those, and it'll take you to some similar well-respected blogs and vlogs. A good source of information.
And Alfredo, Peter Taylor here says that we could also look to how Bosch Australia have transformed themselves, and I know other companies too, have transformed themselves and are now assisting Australian companies with their competency in manufacturing systems. So again, reaching out for assistance, collaborating, reaching out to people like yourself and us at AMGC for guidance and connections, which we can all do. But if you could leave people with some piece of advice, what's your take on that?
well, I think just really quickly, it was mentioned before, you know, how do small manufacturers that don't have the volume can upscale their equipment and so forth and so on. Work with your local government and places like AMGC, because you can form a cluster of manufacturers that come together and say to government, we need this capability for you to fund all these pieces of equipment that we can all share, and you can leverage grants from AMGC and some other organizations. And that's a way to come together and sort of have access to much newer, sophisticated equipment.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say really quickly is about technology. Don't be afraid. Embrace the technology, because it's not going back. We're never going to go back to the dark ages, right? We're moving forwards. It's a continuum of technology development that's going to happen. You need to embrace new technology, not be afraid about it, right? So
That's a very good point. So don't be afraid. I 100% agree. That's good advice, Alfredo. Thank you for that. Nicole, what do people do right now? What can they do today that'll help their business right now?
Just give it a go. Manufacturing doesn't have to be big business. It doesn't have to be frightfully expensive. If you need something, make one. Just do a draft, you know, get a piece of wire, bend it up. Find a piece of fabric and sew it into your face mask or whatever. If you do a decent enough job of it and you can see that it has potential, just share it with a couple of friends. And if they like it, make a few more and sell them to your neighbours. And then all of a sudden you're a manufacturer.
I love it. I really love it. So can all of you please get out there and have a look on Facebook and like Davo's fencing clip. It's a great Facebook page and getting more hits all the time, which is terrific. We've got some slides to bring up. So thank you, Kelly and Ellen. And we'll just recap what we've gone over today, and looking forward to much more of this. I want to thank our panelists for being with us today. It's great to have such expert advice and guidance that we can all latch onto. So today we've talked about adopting technology and, you know, importantly set an overall direction by identifying the problem or the opportunity. And we certainly heard that from Nicole, identifying a problem and making a business out of that. Take small steps. Look for simple measures that fit your needs and your circumstances and your capabilities. Keep things simple. Create a simple system that works and then improve it over time. Partner with our universities, as Alfredo's talked about. Partner with the universities to create prototypes. You can adopt digital technologies more quickly that way by partnering, and it doesn't have to be so expensive. And certainly build relationships with global integrators and the primes. The prime defense companies and others are looking for local supply chains. So feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you to those opportunities that are growing. And loaning or sharing equipment, we talked about that. Look at how you can talk to perhaps a neighbouring business or an industry body that you know that can help connect you to another manufacturer that might be able to support your business in a time of need. So that's really important. Now, as always, you can join the AMGC. It's completely free to become a member. You can follow all of us on LinkedIn and look at Michael Hattie's Twitter feed. It's growing by the day. It's a lot of information that we share across Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram and others. And the YouTube channel, you'll be able to watch a replay of this episode tomorrow morning. Have a look at the Manufacturing Academy. Log in and learn. It's a great online learning platform where I was able to interview manufacturers right across Australia. So business leaders that are sharing their experience about how they're transforming their business today. And finally, the COVID-19 Manufacturer Response Register, which Alfredo talked about. That platform has been upgraded just this week. So I'd encourage you to get on and have a look at the new platform now for the Response Register. And we've got people engaging on that, manufacturers that make medical PPE equipment and people that need to purchase it, whether it's a doctor's clinic, a hospital, or in your own business. We've got mining companies reaching out looking for face masks and other needs, and that Response Register can help you. So again, I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you guys for joining me today. Have a look at the 10 Ways report on the AMGC website. And we look forward to doing this all again next week. So thank you one and all. All the best.